16 Brumaire-class submarines were authorized by the French naval program of 1906. They represented a development from earlier steam-powered models, specifically the Pluviose class. This was a significant step in the evolution of the French submarine fleet. Designers moved away from steam engines, which had a major drawback. Crews had to wait a long time for the boilers to cool down before diving. Instead, the new boats were equipped with more reliable diesel-electric systems for surface running. This class became part of a large-scale fleet modernization, building on the experience gained from early experimental submarines like the Narval of 1899. The primary innovation of the Brumaire class was the double hull design, developed by Maxime Leboeuf. The strong pressure hull was housed inside an outer shell, which greatly improved buoyancy and seakeeping. This design addressed the issues faced by single-hull predecessors, offering better maneuverability both when surfaced and submerged. Essentially, these were submersible torpedo boats capable of extended patrols. Thanks to their diesel engines, the submarines could submerge much faster, making them ideal for defense in hazardous waters. The development of the Brumaire class was influenced by the naval arms race leading up to World War I. France aimed to counter threats from Germany and Austria-Hungary by actively expanding its submarine force. By 1914, the French fleet was one of the largest in the world, and Brumaire-class submarines played a crucial role in defending the Mediterranean and the English Channel. To accelerate production, construction was distributed among the main shipyards in Cherbourg, Rochefort, and Toulon. Each shipyard adapted the diesel engines in its own way, but strictly adhered to Leboeuf's hull design standards. One notable submarine from this class was the French submarine Curie. Its double hull design provided enhanced compartmentalization and better buoyancy control. This made the vessel an excellent platform for coastal operations. The displacement of the Curie was 438 short tons when surfaced and 607 short tons when submerged. It was a compact yet dependable boat. Its length was 171 feet, its beam 17 feet, and its draft 10 feet, allowing for excellent maneuverability in confined waters. Propulsion was provided by two propeller shafts. For surface running, it utilized two MAN diesel engines producing 840 horsepower, while submerged, it ran on two electric motors generating 660 horsepower. The maximum surface speed was 13 knots, and the maximum submerged speed was 8.8 knots. The operational range extended to 1,700 miles at a surface speed of 10 knots, or 84 miles at a submerged speed of 5 knots. The maximum diving depth was 131 feet. Armament consisted of one internal bow 17.7-inch torpedo tube with one spare torpedo. This was augmented by external Drzewiecki drop collars, which carried 6 additional torpedoes. The total torpedo payload was 8, and they could be launched rapidly even without fully submerging. The crew consisted of 29 men, comprising 2 officers and 27 sailors, who operated effectively within the confined spaces of early 20th century submarines. The French submarine Curie was built at the Toulon shipyard. It was the 16th and final boat of the Brumaire class, authorized under the French Fleet Construction Program of 1906. Its keel was laid down in 1907 during a period of significant pre-war naval expansion. The submarine was launched on July 18, 1912. This marked a key milestone after 5 years of construction, during which particular emphasis was placed on the double hull design and the diesel power plant. After launching, the vessel's outfitting began. Curie was equipped with MAN-type diesel engines, torpedo tubes, and other necessary systems. Construction was fully completed in 1914, and at that same time, the submarine officially joined the French Navy. It was named in honor of the prominent physicists Pierre and Marie Curie. This followed the tradition of the Brumaire class, where boats were named after famous scientists to highlight the intellectual heritage of France. The submarine crew consisted of 29 sailors. Throughout 1913 and early 1914, they went through intensive training. The crew had to get used to the double hull design and learn how to handle the boat in rough seas. The main focus was on reconnaissance missions in the Adriatic. Initially, Curie was based in Toulon, but later it was transferred to the port of Bizerte in Tunisia. This provided a more advantageous position in the Mediterranean Sea in case a major war broke out. When the First World War broke out in August 1914, Curie was mobilized to blockade the Austro-Hungarian fleet in the Adriatic Sea. The boat conducted its first patrols from forward bases in Corfu and Malta. Its armament consisted of a single 18-inch bow torpedo tube and 6 external torpedo racks, which were used for defense and reconnaissance. The submarine was commanded by Lieutenant Gabriel O'Byrne, a French officer of Irish descent. Thanks to thorough pre-war training, the vessel was fully ready for combat operations. Curie became part of the French Adriatic Division. The submarine supported the Allied strategy, which aimed to bottle up the Austro-Hungarian fleet in its home waters. To achieve this, a tight blockade was established around key ports like Cattaro and Pola. This was meant to disrupt enemy supply lines and stop ships from going out to sea. Starting in the late summer of 1914, Curie made numerous reconnaissance sorties into the Adriatic. The crew monitored activity along the enemy coast and looked for interception opportunities. The submariners often had to operate in dangerous waters patrolled by enemy destroyers and torpedo boats. To avoid detection, Curie performed complex maneuvers while submerged. There were even instances where the boat had to evade depth charges during close encounters with the enemy. During these operations, the submarine Curie shadowed several Austro-Hungarian convoys. It did not engage in direct combat, which clearly shows the tactical difficulties early in the war against vigilant patrols. The boat often struggled with the reliability of its MAN diesel engines, a common issue for the Brumaire class. This sometimes limited its time on extended combat patrols. For stealthy attacks, Curie used 2 external 18-inch torpedo mounts. This allowed firing torpedoes without fully surfacing, which was perfectly suited for the shallow waters of the Adriatic. The submarine coordinated with Allied surface forces, such as destroyers from the French 1st and 2nd Light Squadrons, for better reconnaissance and to support the naval blockade. In December 1914, the French submarine Curie was sent on a high-stakes mission. The objective was to infiltrate the Austro-Hungarian naval base in the city of Pula. This was their fleet's primary anchorage in the Adriatic Sea. Under the command of Lieutenant Gabriel O'Byrne, the crew was tasked with scouting the harbor defenses and, if possible, attacking enemy warships, specifically the dreadnought Viribus Unitas. On December 17th, the armored cruiser Jules Michelet towed Curie from the Ionian Sea and released her 150 nautical miles from the base. This significantly reduced the distance the submarine had to cover on her own. Curie reached the base the following day. Gabriel O'Byrne spent time observing enemy ship movements to identify safe passage through the minefields. On December 19th, he moved close enough to examine the anti-submarine barrier near the breakwater, then withdrew to plan the final approach. On December 20th, the submarine Curie approached the harbor submerged. She navigated through patrolled waters and past the outer defensive wire net. The boat successfully bypassed the first line of defense, but became entangled in the second while attempting to dive deeper. Gabriel O'Byrne initiated a maneuver at a diving depth of 65 feet. The crew heard chains and cables scraping along the hull for about 30 seconds. Then the noise stopped, and it seemed the obstacle had been cleared. But when Curie ascended to periscope depth, the commander realized the boat had only passed the outer section of the barrier. Forward momentum had dragged her into the second net. It wrapped around the hull and rudder so tightly that reversing the propellers and changing depth failed to free her. After several hours of futile attempts to break loose, the crew faced an air shortage and extreme strain on the machinery. Electricity and compressed air reserves were depleted. Gabriel O'Byrne ordered the boat to surface so the crew could breathe. This was not a tactical maneuver, but a desperate bid for survival. As soon as the conning tower broke the surface, the destroyer Magnet and the torpedo boat TB-63T opened fire. The engagement was brief. Thus, the clandestine operation ended with one of the most unusual captures of a modern submarine during that war. Under fire from the Austro-Hungarian destroyer and coastal batteries, the submarine Curie sustained several hits that damaged her steering and hull. To prevent capture, Commander O'Byrne ordered the seacocks opened to scuttle the vessel. The crew abandoned the boat and she settled on the bottom in shallow water. Of the 26 crew members, 23 survived but were taken prisoner. 3 died, including the executive officer, Lieutenant Pierre Chaillet. The French command initially believed the submarine had been lost in combat or had struck a mine. Due to a lack of precise information, they officially declared her lost based on foreign reports. After Curie was scuttled on December 20th, 1914, near the entrance to Pula Harbor, the Austro-Hungarian military quickly located her. The boat lay at a depth of about 128 feet. The exact location was known immediately, as the submarine had surfaced earlier after becoming entangled in the defensive nets and coming under fire. That was when the surviving sailors managed to make it ashore. Salvage operations began as early as December 21st, 1914. They were conducted in stages over several weeks, and on February 2nd, 1915, the vessel was successfully raised to the surface. The operation was a success despite the challenges of working in a defended harbor, and the submarine itself was recovered with minimal damage. The double-hull construction of the Brumaire class played a significant role in preserving the vessel's structural integrity underwater, which greatly facilitated the lifting process. During the initial inspection, Austro-Hungarian engineers confirmed from the French markings that this was the modern submarine Curie. They immediately recognized its advantages in size, range, and combat capabilities. Compared to the small and mostly outdated Austro-Hungarian submarines, like the early classes from U1 to U4, which had issues with reliability and diving depth, this was a significant step forward. So instead of dismantling the captured vessel, they decided to restore it. This would fill a critical need for larger and more effective submarines for operations in the Adriatic Sea. After this, the salvaged Curie was towed to the Pula shipyard for a detailed inspection and repairs. After repairs at the State Austro-Hungarian shipyard on June 6, 1915, the vessel entered the fleet under the name SMU-14. The letters SM stood for Seiner Majestat, meaning His Majesty's ship. Its first commander was Lieutenant Otto Zeidler, who commanded the submarine until October 14, 1915. During this time, U-14 carried out its first few patrols, which had limited success. This early period of service also showed that there was still a lot of work ahead. On February 7, 1916, during operations near Durrës, U-14 survived a depth charge attack. It returned to base with its external torpedoes destroyed and holes in both fuel tanks. This damage demonstrated both the strength of the basic double hull design and the vulnerability of the equipment located outside the pressure hull. Instead of just doing temporary repairs, the command sent the submarine for a massive reconstruction, which lasted from February to November 1916. Command of the submarine then passed to Georg Ritter von Trapp, a decorated officer known for his previous successes aboard U-5. He led the boat until January 1918. Between February and November 1916, the submarine underwent a major refit to fix ongoing issues. This included adding structural reinforcements and a practical German-style conning tower, which replaced the original low French design. This new tower greatly improved watchkeeping and surface control. The crew also installed upgraded diesel engines delivering 840 brake horsepower and enhanced electric motors producing 660 shaft horsepower. Another game changer was the installation of larger fuel tanks. The surface range jumped from roughly 1,700 to 6,500 nautical miles at 10 knots. This transformed a simple coastal boat into a long-range submarine that could travel from Kotor all the way to the central Mediterranean and back without needing a nearby base. The armament was also adjusted. They kept the 17.7-inch torpedo tubes with one in the bow and 6 external launchers, but added a 3.5-inch deck gun. This deck gun gave the crew a way to stop or sink smaller merchant ships without wasting their limited torpedoes. Of course, any surface attack carried risks, exposing the submarine to armed resistance and enemy aircraft. After the refit, the submarine had a surface speed of about 13 knots and a submerged speed of 8 knots. Transitioning the submarine for Austro-Hungarian use meant training a highly mixed crew of Austrians, Germans, Croats, Slovenes, Hungarians, and Czechs. They had to learn how to operate the retained French mechanical and electrical systems. This relied heavily on intensive pre-war drills created by the Navy to prepare multi-ethnic crews for submarine duty. The original French crew of 26 lost 3 men when the boat initially sank, and the 23 survivors were captured. This left the new crew with no one to show them the ropes. Still, the newly refitted U-14 became a valuable trophy for propaganda, serving as a powerful symbol of Austro-Hungarian technical skill. After joining the Austro-Hungarian Navy in June 1915, U-Boat 14 conducted extensive patrols in the Adriatic Sea. Operating from bases in Pula and Kotor, she targeted Italian and Allied merchant ships, helping the Central Powers enforce a blockade and disrupt vital supply lines. Between 1915 and 1918, these operations focused on defending the eastern Adriatic coast. The submarine also made occasional pushes toward the Strait of Otranto to challenge enemy convoys heading into the Mediterranean. Under commanders like von Trapp, from October 1915 onward, U-Boat 14 focused its torpedo attacks on unarmed vessels. These efforts played a significant part in the Austro-Hungarian submarine flotilla's overall success, helping them sink over 220,000 gross registered tons of Allied shipping during the war. In 1917, the submarine U-Boat 14, under the command of von Trapp, conducted a series of highly successful patrols. The crew managed to evade Allied pursuit and deliver several precise torpedo strikes. The first confirmed success came on April 28th. Off the coast of Greece, U-Boat 14 sank the British tanker Teakwood, which had a displacement of 5,315 long tons and was heading from Texas to Port Said. On May 3rd, in the same area, the boat sent the Italian steamer Antonio Sciezza, displacing 1,905 long tons, to the bottom. These attacks proved the effectiveness of the modernization carried out in 1916. Now, U-Boat 14 could operate far from her Adriatic bases and conduct long patrols along the trade routes between Malta, Egypt, Greece, and the Eastern Mediterranean. From April to October 1917, this submarine destroyed 11 merchant ships with a total displacement of 47,653 long tons. Among them were the Italian steamer Milazzo at 11,477 long tons, sunk on August 29th, and the Capo di Monte at 5,902 long tons, which went down on October 23rd. Both sank in the central Adriatic. During a July patrol, the crew of U-Boat 14 survived using deception rather than weapons. While passing north of Corfu, where French forces were based, the submarine flew a French flag. They had kept it from the days when the vessel was named Curie and belonged to France. Suddenly, a French patrol aircraft approached, and the crew simply did not have time to submerge. The sailors on deck started waving their hats and handkerchiefs, and the pilot, instead of attacking, waved back at them. This was an incredible incident because after her refit, the conning tower looked nothing like the standard Brumaire-class submarines. Actions like this perfectly highlighted the role of U-Boat 14 in the overall campaign. The submarine disrupted Italian coastal shipping and supported the German U-boats she shared bases with. Maneuvering in shallow waters among numerous islands also helped her avoid destroyer patrols. The August patrol was her most successful. After leaving the Cattaro base on August 20th and getting past the barrage in the Strait of Otranto, U-Boat 14 sank the French steamer Constance on August 23rd, followed by the British Kilwinning the next day. On August 26th, the British steamer Titian went to the bottom, and on the night of August 28th, the same fate met Nairn, which was carrying coal to Port Said. On August 29th, just east of Malta, Milazzo was attacked. By September 1st, when U-Boat 14 returned to Cattaro, 5 ships had been destroyed. In this single patrol alone, the submarine racked up more than half of her total sunken displacement. U-Boat 14 never sank a single warship, but her operations helped maintain control over the northern Adriatic until Allied pressure increased in 1918. The final streak of victories happened in October. On October 19th, U-Boat 14 sank the British steamer Elphinstone, which was carrying military cargo between Malta and Suda Bay. One person died. That same day, the submarine sent the British steamer Good Hope, loaded with iron ore, to the bottom. A few days later, the vessel Capo di Monte became the final victim of U-Boat 14. These results were achieved in a short time, but they required long searches, careful target identification, and constant risk in waters patrolled by Allied destroyers, aircraft, and smaller vessels. However, U-Boat 14 faced serious problems. Since it was a refitted French vessel, it broke down frequently due to unreliable salvaged parts. Its surfaced range was about 7,480 nautical miles, which was significantly less compared to German U-boats of the time. The geography of the Adriatic only made the situation worse. The shallow waters prevented deep dives, and during transits to the south, the Otranto Barrage, a system of nets and minefields set up by the Allies in 1915, posed a massive threat. By the end of 1917, the Allies had improved their anti-submarine tactics. Thanks to the convoy system and aerial reconnaissance, the effectiveness of patrols dropped significantly. Despite this, U-Boat 14 avoided destruction at the hands of the enemy and completed nearly 20 combat patrols throughout its history. Its service ended with the signing of the armistice on November 3, 1918. The submarine, U-Boat 14, was recalled to the base in Pola and decommissioned amid the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Up until that point, the boat had successfully helped maintain the blockade of Allied fleet movements. Georg von Trapp left his command on January 13, 1918. After him, Friedrich Schlosser commanded the submarine until June, followed by Hugo Pistel, who remained in charge right up to the final fall of the monarchy. Neither of these officers ever managed to add new sunken vessels to the victory list of U-Boat 14. At that stage, Allied convoy organization, regular aerial patrols, and anti-submarine barriers made independent attacks increasingly difficult. Besides that, the old boat needed constant repairs after years of heavy service in two different navies. Following the armistice of Villa Giusti, signed on November 3, 1918, between the Allies and Austria-Hungary, all naval forces in Pola, including submarines, had to surrender. The naval clauses of the treaty required the handover of 15 submarines built between 1910 and 1918. Allied forces were also to occupy the arsenal in Pola within 48 hours of the cessation of hostilities. U-Boat 14, which was based in the Adriatic as part of the local fleet, was handed over to the Allies in November 1918 under these conditions. The Treaty of Saint-Germain, signed on September 10, 1919, officially determined the post-war fate of the former Austro-Hungarian fleet. All warships were permanently transferred to the Allies as reparations. Since U-Boat 14 was originally a French Brumaire-class submarine that had been captured in 1914, it was decided to return it to France. The official transfer was completed on July 17, 1919. For the French, the return of the boat, which had originally borne the name Curie, held a massive symbolic meaning that far outweighed its actual combat value. The submarine, lost during a daring raid, managed to survive 4 years of enemy service and came back home bearing obvious marks of its Austro-Hungarian modifications. In 1919, the submarine was transferred to a French port, likely Toulon, where she was originally built. Upon arrival, the vessel was carefully inspected and showed significant wear and tear from her long service. She also retained numerous modifications, such as additional deck guns and new engines. The boat was immediately given back her original name, Curie. After a refit in July 1919, which included installing upgraded Grazer diesel engines and extra torpedo tubes, she was recommissioned into the French Navy for a brief stint of interwar service. After returning to French control at the end of World War I, the submarine Curie continued to see limited service until she was struck from the active fleet roster in March 1928. Against the backdrop of massive interwar modernization, her pre-war design was hopelessly outdated. The boat was eventually sent to the scrapyard. The steel hull and most of the parts were recycled, while some surviving components were used as training aids in French naval schools. Scrapping was fully completed in 1929, more than 16 years after her initial launch in Toulon. By that time, submarine design had taken a massive leap forward. There were now more powerful internal torpedo tubes, significantly increased submerged endurance, improved crew conditions, and purpose-built deck guns. Because of this, the external launch system and the old hull design of the Curie became technically obsolete. As a symbol of the dangerous innovations in early 20th century submarine warfare, the career of the Curie clearly showed the vulnerability of pre-war designs to anti-submarine defenses. This indirectly influenced the development of more robust French submarines like the Requin class. Today, there are no dedicated memorials to this vessel, but she holds an important place in naval history as a unique prize that managed to serve on both sides of the conflict.